Here's a good rule of practical reasoning. You don't get to criticize someone else for being an extremist on a particular issue if you yourself are also an extremist, let alone if your view is even more extreme. When it comes to abortion, there are extreme positions and there are moderate positions. Perhaps the most extreme pro-life position you can take, at least within the Overton window of acceptable positions, is that abortion should be banned from conception onward, no matter the circumstances. No exception for the life of the mother, no exception for rape, no exception for the health of the mother, no exception if the fetus has a condition that's likely incompatible with life. Nothing. The most extreme pro-choice position you can take, again, at least within the Overton window of acceptable positions, is that abortion should be legal all the way up to birth, for whatever reason, and we might add the government should pay for it. Abortion should simply be on demand and free, and it should be considered a standard part of women's health care. As usual, by labeling these positions extreme, I don't mean to discredit them. As I've said before, extreme isn't a value term. It simply means that it's on that outer edge of the range of acceptable positions you can take on abortion. Although, again, I think the truth is usually somewhere in the middle. There's no antecedent reason to reject out-of-hand extreme positions just because they're extreme. In between these two extreme views lies a range of more moderate views. For example, a more moderate pro-lifer could add an exception in the case of the life of the mother, or in the case of rape, or in the case that the baby is likely to paralyze the mother if the baby has it, or in the case of a fetus that has a condition that's likely incompatible with life, and so on. Similarly, a more moderate pro-choicer could allow for some cutoff point, maybe viability, maybe when the fetus can feel pain, after which abortion is only allowed in very serious circumstances. The more we moderate the extreme positions, the more they begin to overlap. In my experience, and to the best of my knowledge, few high-profile and influential pro-lifers believe that abortion should be banned in all circumstances, without exception. The majority of pro-lifers, both rank and file and in leadership positions, support an exception like this, even if they argue this rarely or maybe even is never necessary in late-term pregnancies. Even the very pro-life organization National Right to Life supports an exception like this. A fair number of other pro-lifers support an exception in the case of rape, though this is more controversial. Both Bush Sr. and Bush Jr. supported exceptions like this, for example. But it's probably right to say this is becoming less common as our politics get more polarized. Ted Cruz, for example, does not support a rape exception. It's also worth noting, I think, that the current Republican platform makes no mention of exceptions, though it's hard to know what to make of that. To summarize then, the mainstream pro-life position these days seems to be that abortion should be illegal from conception onward, except in the case that the life of the mother is in danger. All abortion restrictions at the state level I'm aware of have an exception like this, and many also have an exception in the case of rape or incest. Now you might be tempted to think the extreme pro-choice position is as uncommon among pro-choicers as the extreme pro-life position is among pro-lifers. And this may well be true among ordinary, everyday pro-choicers. There's good evidence that most Americans support abortion restrictions in the second and third trimesters, and maybe this is true of rank-and-file pro-choicers as well. At the same time, this shout your abortion movement is growing, so maybe this is changing. But among pro-choice organizations, activists, and politicians, the extreme pro-choice position is the mainstream pro-choice position. Let's go back to the beginning. We've all heard of Roe v. Wade, but few of us have heard of Doe v. Bolton, a companion abortion decision that was passed down by SCOTUS on the very same day. If you look carefully at these two decisions, the combined force of them is that the Constitution guarantees abortion access all the way up to birth for virtually any reason. While it's true that Roe affirms that states can regulate abortion in the third trimester if they so choose, it also states that any abortion restrictions must contain exceptions for both the life and the health of the mother. And this is where Doe becomes very important. Doe makes it crystal clear that health should be understood very broadly. Doe states, and I quote, "We agree with the district court that the medical judgment may be exercised in light of all factors, physical, emotional, psychological, familial, and the woman's age, relevant to the well-being of the patient. All these factors may relate to health. This allows the attending physician the room he needs to make the best medical judgment, and it is room that operates for the benefit, not the disadvantage, of the pregnant woman." It's hard to see what wouldn't count as a legitimate reason for an abortion given such a broad conception of health. Accordingly, since the courts have ruled that such an exception must be included in any abortion restriction, even in the third trimester, the highest court in the land has effectively ruled that abortion access should be basically unfettered, up to birth. So right from the beginning, pro-choice legal activists and opinion makers have advocated for the most extreme pro-choice position available. The core of pro-choice legal activism, Roe and Doe, is anything but moderate. Now, some states have defied this ruling, and they allow an abortion in the third trimester only in case the life of the mother is in danger. But other states have laws in the books that match the Roe and Doe decision. In fact, the recent New York State law expanding abortion access that was so controversial just lifts its language from Roe and Doe, thereby codifying SCOTUS protections into state law. This was by design, as its crafters explicitly indicated, since their concern is that abortion access will be rolled back at the federal level given what's going on in SCOTUS right now. The law adds a Doe-style health exception in the case of late-term abortions, thereby effectively writing abortion on demand into state law. The Virginia law, which has garnered so much controversy, though it's now failed, basically does exactly the same thing. It has a Doe-style health exception in the case of late-term abortions. Here's a video of a spokesperson for the law that's making the rounds right now.
Delegate Tran.
Yes, sir.
How late in a pregnancy would your bill apply if a physician was simply willing to certify that the continuation of the pregnancy would impair the mental health of the woman? How late are we talking about?
Well, so the way the suggestion that we've made in the bill is to say it's in the third trimester and at the, with the certification of the physician. So
how late in the third trimester would you be able to do that?
It's very unfortunate that our physicians, witnesses, were not able to attend today to speak specifically.
No, I'm talking about your bill. How late in the third trimester could a physician perform an abortion if he indicated it would impair the mental health of the woman?
Or physical health.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm talking about the mental health.
So, through the third trimester. The third trimester goes all the way up to 40 weeks.
Okay. But to the end of the third trimester?
Yep. I don't think we have a limit in the bill.
So, where it's obvious that a woman is about to give birth, she has physical signs that she is about to give a birth, would that still be a point at which she could request an abortion if she was so certified? She's dilating.
Mr. Chairman, that would be a decision that the doctor, the physician, and the woman would make.
I understand that. I'm asking
point.
if your bill allows that.
My bill would allow that, yes.
I certainly could have said a week from her due date, and that would have been the same answer, correct?
That it's allowed in the bill, yes.
Yes. And in addition to what you just represented, you do acknowledge that you substantially changed the standard by removing a couple of words here, correct? You're changing the standard.
I'm changing the standard, yes.
Okay, all right.
In fact, on average, in terms of the permissiveness of our abortion laws, America has some of the most extreme abortion laws in the Western world. And this goes beyond lawmakers. Mainstream pro-choice activists, organizations, and politicians also endorse the extreme view. For example, both NARAL and Planned Parenthood both celebrated the passage of the New York State law. Both Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton understand what SCOTUS says, and they both supported Doe-style health exception in any restrictions on late-term abortion. Obama even voted against a bill that would require doctors to provide life-saving aid to infants that survive an abortion. Now, the response I usually get when I bring these sorts of facts up from people who are pro-choice is that women rarely, if ever, decide to have an abortion in the third trimester for non-medically serious reasons. Late-term abortions are exceedingly rare, and when they do happen, they're for very serious, even dire reasons, like the life of the mother or the fetus has some abnormality that's inconsistent with life. Now, there are two replies that should always be made when someone gives this response. First, these laws, in fact, allow abortion for non-medically serious reasons, regardless of whether it ever or rarely happens. And that is itself a form of extremism. Second, while it's true that late-term abortions are by far the most uncommon type of abortion, the best evidence we have strongly indicates that it's simply false that most late-term abortions happen for medically serious reasons. This, as far as I can see, is simply a pro-choice myth. For example, take this 2013 study conducted by Guttmacher, a pro-choice friendly organization.
Among other things, this study surveys the reasons why women have late-term abortions, when they're performed for reasons besides fetal anomalies or endangerment to the mother's life. This study provides good evidence that women have even late-term abortions for non-medically serious reasons. In fact, commenting on the general state of the evidence, the authors of the study go so far as to state that, quote, data suggests that most women seeking later terminations are not doing so for reasons of fetal anomaly or life endangerment.
In other words, this response is propaganda, twice over. It tries to change the subject from what the laws allow to what women actually choose, and even then, it gets the facts about why women choose late-term abortions wrong.
I call these facts here, but the truth is that the evidence we have on why women have late-term abortions is pretty limited. It is fair to say, though, that the best evidence that we do have points in the opposite direction of the common pro-choice claim that most, let alone all, late-term abortions are for medically serious reasons.
Pro-choice extremism is present both in law and in practice. I've actually found that a lot of pro-choice activists engage in a kind of double talk here. They claim that these laws only allow late-term abortion for medically serious reasons, or that women only ever have them for medically serious reasons. But when you point out these claims are false, they quickly default to their position that abortion should be a choice between a woman and her doctor. In other words, they revert back to the extremist position, which is their default position. For these reasons, I find it hypocritical when pro-choice politicians and activists, who themselves tend to endorse the most extreme pro-choice position available, criticize pro-lifers for being extremists and believing all sorts of crazy things, all the while positioning themselves as being the moderate and humane ones. Pro-lifers believe blastocysts and zygotes are persons with the same rights as you and me. Okay, but you believe that third-trimester fetuses, which, let's be honest, are in no significant way different than newborn babies, should be allowed to be aborted for any reason whatsoever up to birth in the name of female bodily autonomy.
So when we look around the world, even to a lot of more progressive countries, like you look at European countries, Nordic countries, they usually tend to limit it around 12 weeks. What do you think about that standard?
I think that a woman's body is under her control, and that I believe that if a woman needs an abortion, she should have it on demand, free, and no apology, and it should be a human right. That's what I think.
Who is the bigger extremist here? The pro-lifer who believes that abortion should be illegal except in the case of life of the mother? Or the pro-choicer who believes that abortion should be allowed up to birth for whatever reason? I submit that the mainstream pro-choice position is at least as extreme as the mainstream pro-life position. And I'd actually go further. I think the mainstream pro-choice position is considerably more extreme than the mainstream pro-life position, and I'll tell you why. First, the extreme pro-choicer risks much more than the extreme pro-lifer risks. If the pro-lifer is wrong, the worst they've done is unjustifiably limit a woman's control that she can have over her body. This is by no means trivial, but it just doesn't stack up to what the pro-choicer risks by staking out her position. If the pro-choicer is wrong, they have at best turned a blind eye to the murder of millions of morally significant beings. Second, while I think that reasonable people can disagree about when exactly a morally significant being comes on the scene in the course of pregnancy, it is flagrantly contrary to moral common sense to think that a third-trimester fetus is any morally different than a newborn baby. Accordingly, it's deeply contrary to moral common sense to think a woman should be able to do whatever she wants with it for whatever reason. In short, while the mainstream pro-life position can appear strange and does require a defense, the mainstream pro-choice position flagrantly violates moral common sense. You have to be convinced of the mainstream pro-life position, but you have to be indoctrinated into the mainstream pro-choice position. For these two reasons: first, that the pro-choicer risks a lot more in staking out her position, and second, that you have to be indoctrinated into this position. The mainstream pro-choice position is by far the more extreme of the two. So, will the real abortion extremists please stand up? No, not you. You. See ya.